INESC TEC and Engenharia Rádio present INESC TEC Science Bits, a monthly signature dedicated to decode science and technology trends. INESC TEC Science Bits, decoding science bit by bit.
Hello, welcome to a new episode of Science Bits, a podcast promoted by INESC TEC and Engenharia Rádio that tries to go further into the main trends in science and technology. Did you know that proportionally we have more knowledge about the surface of the moon than we have about the deep sea? Since the ocean and the blue economy are top priorities in Portugal and in the European Union, new solutions have to be designed to help to increase the activity at the ocean in a more effective and lucrative way. And to understand a little bit more about why is it so difficult to gather information from underwater surfaces and what INESC TEC has been working on to solve all those issues, we have with us today two guests who work as researchers at the forefront of these subjects. Rui Campos works at the Center for Telecommunications and Multimedia, and Bruno Ferreira at the Center for Robotics and Autonomous Systems. And welcome both. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for this invitation to participate in this episode of Science Bits. It's my pleasure to be here and share my thoughts about this very important topic for Portugal, Europe, and the whole world.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you both. So today we will be talking about exploring and exploiting the bottom of the ocean. The Portuguese are known to be adventurous at sea, and history has shown us that we have a strong international role by just learning how to communicate effectively while being far away. In the ocean, for instance. What are the main restrictions in exploring the deep sea oceans nowadays? Rui?
Yes, thanks for this first question. The ocean, as everybody knows, is a very harsh environment, which challenges a lot the human physical presence at sea. So, however, humans, and especially the Portuguese, as you said, have always taken advantage of the ocean, mostly for fishing and trading in the past, and more recently for other activities like surfing, and so on. As we all Portuguese know, during the discovery's time, the ocean was key to establish the new trade routes, especially to India, and this was a milestone achieved by the Europeans by that time. Today, the ocean is still key for the world economy, and maybe some of you don't know, but the maritime transportation is responsible currently for more than 90% of the world's trade markets. So to give you an idea with respect to Portugal, every day 400 ships, cargo ships, sail along our coasts. So these are basically the main routes that are passing here along our coast. So the maritime transportation and the sea is still key in the 21st century, like it was in the 15th and 16th century for us. But the ocean is not limited to fishing, trading, surfing, and the other more or less traditional activities that I have already referred. So. And usually these activities take place at surface, but there is almost an unknown world underwater, especially in deep sea waters. And the challenge for us here is how to monitor, survey, explore, and exploit the ocean, and especially the deep sea, in a cost-effective way. And I will come back to that in a minute. So the Portuguese Sea has depths that can reach 6,000 meters, especially if you consider the extension of the Portuguese continental shelf underway. So Portugal has an application submitted to the United Nations to extend its continental shelf, which is under evaluation at the moment in the United Nations, as I've said. So if approved, Portugal will become a territory of 4.1 million square kilometers. This means that we will basically be country of water. This will mean 97% of water and only 3% of dry land. So this whole territory is basically the size of Europe's dry land. So this is a huge territory that we need to consider and to take into account. And the importance of this large territory is, we can think about it at the three levels: geopolitical, economic, and scientific. And let me start with the geopolitical level. So at this level, Portugal will become one of the largest countries in the world, about the size of India. So this is very important because people usually think that Portugal is small, and we are always saying that we are a small country with only 10 million people and so on. But with this extension and this huge territory, mainly water, and all the resources that we know are there, will make Portugal or put Portugal in a different level, at a different level in terms of geopolitical issues. On the other hand, from the economic point of view, it's known that there are plenty of raw materials at sea bottom yet to be explored, which will most probably bring a great economic value to the country, and new business models and new resources to be explored. And finally, from the scientific point of view, there is a great margin to discover new species, new raw materials that can be used for new medicines, for example, and also a great interest in studying and monitoring the ocean, mostly for better understanding climate change phenomena that is currently a very important issue, and the origins of the planet and life, for example. So the sovereignty over all this territory requires the means for surveillance, monitoring, exploration, and exploitation, as I started with. So this cannot be done using only traditional manned means, like manned ships, like we have with our Navy, manned aircrafts that we have with our Air Force, and also manned submarines. There is a clear need for a paradigm shift where robotics will have a key role here. So the use of autonomous vehicles acting as sensors and actuators as well, for instance, when it comes to deep sea mining, and IoT at sea will be crucial for supporting ubiquitous human presence at sea. And with this, we'll have the human eyes and arms at sea, but without the risks of being there physically, and we will achieve this in a cost-effective way that we cannot achieve only with manned means, as I've said. Communications, which is the field I work in, will guarantee that we keep in touch with these autonomous vehicles and IoT devices in real time and remotely at a safer place, because of course the humans usually like more to be on land than to be at sea, because of all the risks that you have if you are at sea in this very harsh environment. So to accomplish this, and this is to finalize the answer to your first question, we need technology, and especially robotics and telecommunications technologies in these two domains, where there are plenty of open research challenges, and this is where we are working on, in addressing these challenges.
So, in short, we can say that in spite of all you explained and described us, there are actually no good solutions or any solutions to respond to broadband and cost-effective internet wireless access at remote ocean areas, even if we're talking the communications area or even in the robotics field, right? So you work in telecommunications, so explain us a little bit. How did this interest for the matter start, and how do you plan to solve these issues?
Yeah, you're right. There are plenty of gaps to fill in here, and it's, as I've said, it's in the communications area, but also in the robotics area, and Bruno we'll talk about it for sure next regarding his expertise. But let me start by saying that the research and development in telecommunications area has a long tradition at INESC TEC, and it all started with the foundation of INESC in Porto back in 1985. So by then we already started to research in this area, but by then we were mostly focused on telecommunications for people and where people lives, which is on land, not at sea, mostly. So this was the main target by then. But let me explain you a little bit the story of our research in this area of maritime communications, because we in 2012 after I finished my PhD, I was looking for new challenges and new problems, new research problems to be solved. And while reading some papers, I realized there was a potential yet to be explored in this domain, in the maritime communications domain, either at surface or underwater. There was a gap to be filled in clearly. So, and this domain is actually a research niche in telecommunications area, with a relative low number of research groups addressing these topics around the world. And why does this happen? Because communicating at sea is not the same as on land. We have the waves, we have the different topography, and the water itself that brings new challenges when with respect, for example, to the radio signal propagation in this environment, which puts researchers or brings up to the researchers doing work in this field new challenges and new problems to be solved. So, and in particular, sorry, by then we identified a clear gap regarding broadband communication solutions at sea, as I've said, either at surface or underwater. And let me briefly explain you or tell you the story where we started at surface and also underwater, and we try to cover all these these two environments at sea. So at surface, we realized there were no solutions available apart from expensive and narrowband satellite communications, and also cellular communications very close to shore, when you are very close to shore, and the traditional VHF analog radios that fishermen and all people sailing at sea use for voice-only communications. This is very important, of course, for them to be in touch with land, but it's a very limited communication solution. So, and by then we also realized there were a few research works developed around the world, and they were mostly happening in Asia and Europe. And inspired by this, we set up an internal research project called MARFI, in partnership with a fishing company here in Porto, and also Porto Digital. So by then they were the responsible entity, and still are the responsible entity for the public internet access in the city, Wi-Fi hotspots and so on. And with this partnership, we basically set up a project that we used to start investigating new innovative maritime communication solutions, especially targeting broadband and targeting also the internet access in high speed, and bring this internet access to the fishing ships sailing along the Portuguese coast. This was very important to kickstart the process and to let us know how it works at sea, what are the challenges, even regarding deployment of solutions and so on. And after this successful internal project, we established a new partnership by then with a funded project with Wavecom, an SME from Portugal, and the Portuguese Navy. And this was the MARCOM project funded by P2020 program, where we could do actual technology development built upon the work that we did in MARFI projects previously. And the project was very successful, and the Portuguese Navy, after the final demo we did in the naval base in Lisbon in 2018, showed very much interest in the solution. And actually we start discussing follow-up projects, and currently we have an European project under evaluation related to this. So this was basically a continuous work that we did, starting from the MAR5 project and then coming or following to the MARCOM, and now with the European project. And let me just to finalize this part of the surface and the issues that we found at the surface. Let me tell you about the other project that we did at an international level, funded by the EEA grants program, called the BlueCom Plus project, that we run together with IPMA and Marlow, a Norwegian company, where we tried to go a step further with respect to MARCOM. So the goal of the project was to create a high altitude network of tether balloons to bring the broadband communications to the sea for humans and things. Things you can think about IoT and especially robots. As I have said in the beginning, since we expect to have more and more robots at the ocean, we need to serve them with great communications, with good communications solutions. This project was very successful. Actually, it was a landmark, I would say, in the state of the art by then, and or it established a landmark in the state of the art by then, and it had a great impact in the media. We had more than 130 news published at the national and international level, and we took the chance to give some radio interviews and some interviews to newspapers, where people showed a lot of interest on this project and the solutions that we were developing. And also scientifically, we got lots of citations, and we still are getting lots of citations to the papers, the scientific papers that we published in along this project. And actually, this project established a breakthrough when it comes to broadband internet access for humans and things offshore. We managed to show that we were able to do high-quality video conferences for more than 40 kilometers from shore with colleagues situated on land, and also we showed that it was possible to have robots and specifically autonomous vehicles uploading data in real time to the cloud while they were doing a mission at sea. So this was mostly so far a short story about what we did at the surface for improving the communication scene, let's say, at sea. But underwater, there are also the same or even bigger challenges to address. And we also found into 2012 lots of open research challenges that we need to address, and particularly again regarding broadband communications underwater. Basically, underwater you find three ways or three means for communicating: using acoustics, radio, or optical wireless. Acoustics are by far the most used solution due to their long range, but the bit rates or the speeds that you can achieve are very, very low. So for broadband, they don't work actually. So when you need to transmit lots of data from a vehicle, for example, autonomous vehicles doing some mission underwater, for example. So the research community has been investigating other alternatives, and most of the community is looking at optical as the major alternative to acoustics. But from our perspective, and we already had this perspective in 2012, sorry, when we started to look into this. By then we found that there were very few works investigating the other alternative, the radio communications underwater. And the reason for this is that radio underwater doesn't work quite well. So in terms of range, you don't have a big radio range, or you basically have short range communications with the radio. But we thought by then, and we still are convinced, that radio communications can be very relevant for short range communications and can be used in complement to other technologies such as acoustics and optical. So taking this vision into consideration, we also started an internal project called by then Under 5 to start investigating on underwater radio communications. So 8 years ago. We did some research in lab and in real environment in order to prove ourselves and to the community that radio actually has a role and can play a role in contactless and short-range broadband communications underwater. This scenario was actually explored in another project funded by EAE grants program called Endure project, where we also participated together with our robotics colleagues, or our colleagues from robotics, sorry, and we run this project also together with IPMA and Marlow, the same Norwegian company. So to finalize with respect to this and tell you also the story that we built along these 8 years. More recently, we are running another project funded by FCT, where we are trying to explore these short-range communications and also the concept of data milling. So what does it mean? Data milling, we are basically exploring the following. Let's assume that we have a submarine, autonomous submarine, doing some mission underwater at the sea bottom, for instance, doing some survey to find some material or some species, and you need to transmit the data, the video data that this device or vehicle is capturing, and as fast as possible. So if you use acoustics or optical or radio directly, with acoustics you don't have the speed that you need, and with the optical and radio you have not that much range to reach the surface, so you need another solution. And what we are trying to explore is to have small vehicles that go and meet the bigger autonomous submarine and download this data and bring it to the surface and go back again and so on. So we are trying to develop a new approach and a new solution to have this data available faster at the surface, with, of course, the advantages of having this data faster at the surface and helping in taking decisions according to the data that was captured by the bigger submarine. So, and let me say that when available, this solution developed in this project, the GROW project, will be a breakthrough as well. So when it comes to broadband underwater wireless communication. So we are convinced that we will achieve here a great milestone with respect to the work that we have been developing and also within the community. And we will establish basically a breakthrough, as I've said. So to conclude, with all this past and current research work, we have been walking down the road towards making affordable broadband internet access and IoT a reality at sea. This is basically what we are trying to achieve.
Well, thank you. It's really interesting to understand the differences between the work done at the surface and the water. I believe that people don't understand how difficult it is to develop research projects differently in those subjects. So Rui has talked a lot about robotics during explaining this research project. So Bruno, your ground of action is robotics. How do you think robots help bringing internet to deep sea? And when did you begin to work it and realize it was important?
Okay. Let me first say that, well, traditionally, in underwater robotics, the communications are seen as a feature to autonomous underwater vehicles. So we can think of communications like devices that we can append to our autonomous vehicles, and they can take advantage of those devices to communicate between them or other entities that may be in the area. So, but lately we have been exploring the opposite, just like Rui has just explained, and I believe this is some of the topics or the research that can help to bring internet to deep sea. And the main idea is to use, instead of having autonomous underwater vehicle using communications for many reasons that they can use the communications, we would employ the AUVs or the robots as means to communicate between 2 points. But let me explain this a bit more in detail. So, autonomous underwater vehicles are robots, and those robots carry a set of sensors that are used either for their localization or to collect data about or on a given region or environment. And while they collect the data about the environment, sometimes they need to communicate with their operators to receive high-level commands or to report the status of the mission, for example. They can use also communications to communicate between. If we would have a team of robots, they would use communications in order to synchronize their actions and achieve a common goal, for example. So in this case, the communications, the autonomous vehicles use the communication, so they are users of communications. But on the other hand, the robots, as I mentioned first, can be the robots can be vehicles of information, let's say, to carry data from a given system A to a system B that are far apart. And in those cases, the robots are physical and real devices that serve as autonomous mobile storage devices that can transport very large amounts of data. And those solutions may be faster than the current state-of-the-art solutions, and mainly underwater, actually. And basically, this is what we are doing in the project GROW Rui just mentioned. It should also be noted that while transporting data using robots at the surface may be inefficient and slow, underwater, actually, it could be a very effective way of communicating. And the main reasons for that are that the traditional solutions for underwater communications use acoustics, and they only allow a very small data rates that are unsuited for very large amounts of data that we are collecting nowadays. So using the ability of autonomous underwater vehicles to navigate between 2 points and get closer or get close to those points, we may employ other communications technologies, and we have the potential of increasing the data rates.
Well, so as far as I can understand up till now, one of the biggest advantages in this exploration on all these research projects is to gather more and more information, right? About a series of different topics and different information. So, for instance, we cannot even imagine that getting to know the ocean can help us understand better the climate or recognize new mineral richness. There's a lot of things to learn from this exploitation. So, Bruno, what are your ambitions in conquering these challenges and getting these answers?
Yeah, the problem of exploration is very complex, actually, and it must aggregate multiple disciplines from knowledge. So what I mean with that is that engineering alone is unable to provide a full understanding of the ocean, a full picture. But it can help to provide the necessary tools towards that end. For what concerns climate and other dynamic processes, actually right now it is really important to collect not only data over a very large region, but it is also important to collect that data very frequently. So given the scale of the ocean and the desired sampling frequency, the problem is very, very hardly solved by humans. So it would need very, very complex missions with humans, and it's very difficult. That would be very difficult. And this is not to mention the costs and the risks of having people at sea. So we strongly believe that autonomous systems will be the solutions for this problem, actually. But of course, these solutions would imply a very large number of vehicles, and they would need to be simultaneously deployed over the ocean. And that would make the missions and the simultaneous operation of those vehicles very complex. And they will not be, or they would not be able to be manually operated given the number of nodes that we would have over the oceans. But on the other hand, the robots need to stay in the ocean for a very long time, going from a given point to another that are frequently very far apart. And the nature of the mission can be very complex. And it would imply that the vehicle would navigate in very complex environments with obstacles and other mobile platforms such as submarines, ships, or other machines or animals. And the robots would need to avoid them and to accomplish their missions successfully. So basically, the robots need to be truly autonomous and resilient to be effective and reliable. And there is still a very long way to go. And I would say that those are the major challenges that we are addressing right now at INESC.
And Rui, what about you? What comes next?
Yeah, as Bruno said, and going back a bit to where I started, I think the future for sure will be we'll have millions of connected devices operating at sea, either at surface or underwater, and basically the same way we are foreseeing billions of IoT devices connected on land. So for me, this is becoming very clear that we will have much more devices and autonomous devices in particular, as we have said along this discussion, that will require connectivity and connection to the internet as we are seeing on land. This will demand new affordable communications technologies that enable high-speed, low-latency, long-range communications, exactly the same way we are demanding on land with 5G at the moment and future wireless technologies. So we can think about an extension of the scenario that we have on land to the sea for sure. I'm very much convinced about that. And as an example, think about autonomous ships. This is coming to reality at the moment. Norway, for example, is a country that is pushing this forward quite a lot. And these autonomous ships will change the maritime transportation paradigm and bring up new communications requirements in an equivalent way we see on land for autonomous cars and trucks. And also, the digitalization that we have and foresee on land will also arrive at the ocean. So I'm basically convinced that we will see, with some delay, the things that we see happening on land will sooner or later arrive at the ocean, and we will need that so that we can again survey, monitor, explore, and exploit the ocean. On the other hand, the advent of cost-effective microsatellites and micro-launchers that we are seeing nowadays being quite a lot discussed in the community will democratize access to satellites and bring new opportunities and options when it comes to communications and ocean observation. I think this is very important, and it will come up in complement with the solutions that we have been discussing along this chat. And they will represent an interesting and relevant solution to complement these other solutions, in particular regarding the coverage of vast areas of the ocean, as we saw in my first answer to your question. I was talking about a very huge area that is under the sovereignty of Portugal. So we need to think about also satellites, so that we cover vast areas with communications and also with respect to the observation of the ocean. Yet this will only address the problem at the surface. And underwater, there is a great need for new approaches and solutions that enable broadband long-range and low-latency communications. There is a long way to go here, I think. So with the GROW project, for example, that we already talked about, myself and Bruno, we are just starting this journey. So we are just in the very beginning. So wrapping up, I would leave you with this takeaway. Communications and robotics will be crucial for a sustainable and cost-effective human presence at the ocean. So to have our eyes and arms at the ocean without being there. And the sovereignty over all the Portuguese territory will require them for surveillance, monitoring, exploration, and exploitation of the ocean. This is my takeaway for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you both very much. So if nothing, today we learned that this ocean economy potential within the next years, of course, tends to increase all the activity, right? So we have resource exploitation, environmental monitoring, surveillance of maritime borders, apart from all the traditional activities, such as, like you talked about, transportation and fisheries. So, last of all, thank you for all the work you've been developing. And let's wait for new research developments and all the outcomes and milestones you talked about, both of you. And to all of you who have been listening to us, we hope this talk was interesting and fulfilling. We will be meeting soon to talk more about science and technology. So until then, stay safe.
Thank you.
INESC TEC and Engenharia Rádio present INESC TEC Science Bits, a monthly signature dedicated to decode science and technology trends. INESC TEC Science Bits, decoding science bit by bit.